Hey, and welcome back to Joshua Talks Money. Let's talk about Vanguard Mutual Funds. So you might be getting started in investing. You've heard of mutual funds, but maybe you're not sure where to start. Let me talk through this in this video. I'll take away some of the mystery and confusion, and I think by the end of the video, you're gonna feel really informed and have a good overview about what mutual funds are, Vanguard's offerings specifically, and how to get started. All right, let's dive in. All right, so welcome back. I've done some videos on Vanguard's exchange traded funds, or ETFs. I've done an overview and also went pretty detailed into a couple specific ETFs. So if you want to watch those videos, I've linked them down below. But mutual funds are a little bit different. You can really think about it as a bunch of investors like you and me, and we put all of our money together in this fund. And then there's a manager of that fund. And so he takes all that money and he's going to invest it with specific goals for that group of investors. Now those goals can be very different. One goal would be, hey, this fund is meant to track a certain index like the S&P 500, for example. But there's all types of mutual funds with different goals and outcomes, and we'll talk about that more in this video. All right, so out of everything you could possibly learn about mutual funds, I really think there's 5 things that you should probably care about. So the first thing, mutual funds typically have a minimum that you have to invest to basically get access into the mutual fund. So depending on what brokerage you use to buy mutual funds, that's going to vary. But a lot of the Vanguard mutual funds that I really like have a minimum of somewhere around $1,000 to $3,000 to get started. And that might be a lot of money to you and a barrier to entry. So that's why a lot of these mutual funds have an exchange traded fund component or comparable fund that's much less. You can buy a single share, for a few $100s. Okay, the next thing to know about mutual funds is they have some higher expenses. These are things you need to look out for. Now, I think Vanguard does a really great job of trying to keep their expenses low. This is something they're known for. And their expense ratio, which we've talked about in other videos, that's something you'll want to look for because these mutual funds do have often actively managed a component, meaning some super smart investor guy or gal is there picking stocks, rebalancing, making sure the fund is tracking towards the goals that the fund has. Another really unique part of mutual funds is their price updates once per day. And so if you think of an exchange traded fund, that price is fluctuating all day, just like a stock trading on the stock market. Mutual funds, they actually calculate the value at the end of the day based on the net asset value of the fund. So what that basically means is all that money pooled together, investing in all of those securities and investments, and that's calculated at the end of each day, and that spits out a price of what it would cost to invest in the mutual fund. And so that's interesting to know that the price is basically updated daily, where an exchange traded fund, you could sit there and try to time when you want to buy shares or set a limit order to buy at a specific price. That's not so much the case with a mutual fund. All right, and there's 2 more things that you should know. With Vanguard mutual funds, you can actually set up automatic purchasing. And you can do that at some recurring interval so that, let's say it's, every week or every month, you can set that to happen in the background. And that's really, really helpful for investors. It takes a lot of the thinking out of it. You can set it and forget it, much like if you're already investing in your 401k at work. It just comes out, you're funding your retirement and things are good to go. And lastly, the other cool thing is with these Vanguard mutual funds, you can set a certain dollar amount that you want to invest in, where on the exchange traded fund side, you actually have to just purchase the shares of that fund and that ETF at the price that they're at. Vanguard mutual funds let you say, hey, I want to invest $100 every other week. And you can set that up and let it go. Okay, so I want to go through something really cool that is on Vanguard's website. So we have jumped over to the computer. I have my coffee and we're ready to walk through the Vanguard mutual funds list. There's actually over 130 mutual fund options provided by Vanguard. And that can seem pretty overwhelming, but it's actually really exciting if you start to dig in to the details. So they organize the funds by the asset class, and I want to jump way down here to something that might be a bit familiar. So down here is the US stock funds, and we'll start with this VFIAX. This is the mutual fund version of the S&P 500 index. What we can see when we look at this big list is just the general information. You know, you have your ticker, you have the type of asset class that it is. Here's that expense ratio we've talked about. Here is the net asset value price that we've mentioned. This would be, I guess, from Friday. And then they show some historical performance. But if we go into the VFIAX details view, there's a minimum investment of $3,000 and there's an expense ratio of 0.04%. The ETF version of this is VOO, and we've done a very extensive video about that. So let's look at something else. Over to these balanced funds is what they're calling them. These are the target date retirement funds. So if you were going to retire in 2055, for example, this is going to be a mutual fund that's customized for that goal. And what this will do is taper your risk as you age. So when you're younger, you can kind of buy perhaps more volatile stocks and things like that. But as you get older, you want to really protect your wealth. And that is what this fund or comparable funds will do. Now, this has a $1,000 minimum investment. This has honestly 5 times the expense ratio as a VOO ETF, for example. But if we jump down to the portfolio composition, you'll see there's only 5 things. It's the total US stock market. So that's about 54% are going to US stocks. About 36% is going to international stocks. And then the rest are, bonds and international bonds, which is pretty interesting. And that makes up 100% of the holdings of this target date fund. Okay, so coming back to the big list, I would encourage you to come to this website and just scroll around. I will link it in the description of the video. Scroll around, take a look at all the different types of mutual funds, click in, read, what they're made of, look at the, their performance over time, and just start to get familiar with what these investments do and achieve. You can get some really cool stuff down into international stock exposure. I personally own some emerging markets. I do that over in the ETF side though, the VWO ETF. But last thing, even down here, there are specialty mutual funds. So if you chose to invest in this healthcare mutual fund, you could do that. But you'll see the expense ratio is significantly higher, 0.32%. And so it's something to factor in. My biggest recommendation would be to focus more on things like the S&P 500 or these target retirement funds are amazing if you're just getting started and want something pretty easy to set and forget. All right, so that is the quick overview of Vanguard Mutual Funds. If you found it helpful, I would love for you to consider subscribing. I share videos like this every single week. I'm not some fancy financial advisor. I'm just an entrepreneur, business owner that's learned a lot of this stuff on my own. So I thought I'd sit here and share some of that, and maybe it can help you out. If that sounds good, we will be back soon. See you then.